about a year and a couple months in, and it was when I was realizing, like, I'm working a part-time job to help pay for things. I'm not getting paid the most for it, for 5 teams, working day in and day out. I am doing extra work on the side, not just at the university, but I was a waitress at a time just to get some more money in. So that worry just kind of got all bundled up. And one day I'm like, I need to go talk to somebody. And I ended up going talking to a therapist about once a week to help let it all out. But it was also nice just to have someone there I can talk to and it not be judgmental at all, or they're just there as a big support system. It was someone who never knew anything about me, about my life, just someone who would sit there and listen.
What's going on, Samson Strength Coach Collective listeners? On today's episode, we have Jess Givens, Assistant Strength and Conditioning Coach for University of North Dakota. Jess, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to speak with you. I'm jealous. I love schools that have their primary color as green. It's like one of my favorite colors for gear. I'm a Jets fan, so I got to get some gear when I went up there for their internship, but I'm very jealous of the North Dakota green you're rocking.
It was a different color. I've always been around red, blues, and darker colors, but green, it's finally got some color in my closet. I'm pretty happy about it.
Yeah, you got to stick with it now. There's no choice now.
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, can you just give us a breakdown of your full career, everything that led you to strength and conditioning, and then what's led you to your current position?
Absolutely. I actually started my, I would say, overall career when I was an apprentice at the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire. My senior year there, I was an apprentice underneath the head strength and sports performance coach, Zach Ruck. So it's kind of a great way to be taking classes, but also we're starting to get a little more involved with the strength conditioning realm. After that, I did an internship over the summer when I graduated with my exercise science degree. There in the private sector was a little different. So it's nice to have the D3 experience and then move into the private sector. So over the summer, I was there, got my degree. I then went for my master's in strength and conditioning at the University of River Falls, tons of UW schools, big WIAC. And I was there for an intern for my first semester and then progressed into an actual GA position after I got my CSCS, which was huge. So when I got a GA position there, I was able to have 3 teams under my jurisdiction. I had hockey, soccer, and women's lacrosse. Fantastic group of girls. I love them to death. There's photos of them on my wall, always in my heart. But after that, I unfortunately had to leave. It was only a year program at River Falls. So after that, I actually took a step back and interned at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I was at the Cole Center with AJ Whitehead, Jim Snyder, and Paul Lucas with both the basketballs and hockey programs there. Just wanted to get some D1 experience before I jumped into something too big after I graduate, because you never know in our realm. There's positions opening and closing. It's all about time of the year, what's going on, which shift changes. So I then eventually got my position open at St. Mary's University in Minnesota. That was my first full assistant position open. It's a private D3 college in Winona, Minnesota, super small school. I was there for about a year and a half. I had 5 teams underneath my jurisdiction, and then I assisted with hockey camps we had throughout the summer, game management, bunch of side quests. I really enjoyed just being involved with athletics during that time. So putting all hands on with that. And then after a year and a half, I realized I needed to kind of move up in the realm. We all know, like, unfortunately, salary is not the best for us. And working 5 teams, 80-hour weeks or even 60-hour weeks is sometimes too much. So I eventually found this job at the University of North Dakota. It opened up and I took the chance and applied. And I was coming home from Florida, seeing some family down there, when I got the call from Derek Stein of like, hey, we'd like to offer you this opportunity. And not even a week later, I was moving up to North Dakota, moved into my apartment January 1st of 2025, and I've been here since.
That's awesome. That's such a cool story. And what I love is you've just been dominating the Midwest.
Yes. It just keeps getting colder and colder wherever I go.
I'm sure that's the case. Absolutely. And I'm from upstate New York. So I've lived in basically the South ever since I started my career, and everybody just complains about the snow when it snows like 2 or 3 inches. And I'm like, you guys have no clue what it could possibly be like. Like, you've got absolutely no idea. So that's awesome. Well, okay. One thing that was really interesting that you mentioned was you went from your GA back to an internship,
Mhm.
which is can be like, obviously in your case, it worked out very well and it was one of the best decisions you could possibly make. Like, what led you to be okay with that decision? Because sometimes people would advise against that. And then
Mhm.
what do you feel like you got out of being able to do that?
Yeah, I actually got advised against that from the director of athletic performance at River Falls at that time, Carmen Pata. He said, "Are you sure you want to do this? Is this really what you want to do?" And I realized D3 and D1 are very different on the spectrum when it comes to working with athletes, but also scheduling. So I wanted to get my feet wet in the D1 realm, and the best way possible was at UW-Madison. I lived 30 minutes away, so I could live at home, so I was financially stable in that part, but also drive down, get D1 experience being an intern there. The bonus part about my internship at TAP at the time, I was able to come back and they actually pay me to be a coach there. So I was having a side gig of being a private sector coach, but then also going to D1 experience as an intern. That is about 3 months of internship at Madison that I learned so much about and realized the workload, the caliber of athletes is completely different compared to D3. And it just kind of put me in perspective of I'm not ready for D1. And that's what I needed to know. I needed to know, like, right after being a GA, where would I be comfortable and be confident enough in my abilities to coaches? Could I go straight to D1? Could I go D2 or D3, stick to the private sector? And I would rather have all that resources and ability to, or experience before I immediately committed to something and be like halfway through, I can't do this anymore, and then jump out because I don't want to hop from job to job. It doesn't look the best on a resume. So I'd rather sacrifice the time I have, do an intern for a couple months and stay at home and save money that way versus relocate across the country for a job or an internship and not like it and then have to come all the way back home.
Yeah, that makes complete sense and financially smart too, which I love to
Mhm.
hear.
Yeah, it was a blessing in disguise, and the fact that the guys back at TAP, Zach and Zach, and they're both different Zachs. They are the heart and soul to keeping me at home. If it wasn't for them, I probably would not progress as far as I did. They had my back during my internship. They said, "Hey, we want you to come back for the summer if you could. We'd love to pay you for that." It bless their hearts. Like I would not have been able to get as far as I did without them.
That's awesome. And those people are just so important in your career and they can really just either make it or break it truly.
Mhm.
Which is kind of something that I think a lot of coaches neglect is they don't realize that they can get people very excited about strength and conditioning or they can turn them off completely. So I'm glad to hear that you had a positive experience with them. When you look at D3 versus D1, like you mentioned a couple of the differences, just slightly like scheduling and, athlete quality or not quality, let me say a better word, caliber, like you said.
Mhm.
Again, I'm terrible with my English today. I apologize. But what were some of the main differences that you really saw, like between D3 and D1? What were the things that really stuck out to you? And do you still see those differences as you progress past your career, past the point where you went to Wisconsin for your internship?
I would say being from UW-Madison, which is a Big Ten school, to here at University of North Dakota, yes, they're both D1, but the type of athlete that's here, just culture-wise, is a little different. I would say down at Madison, they were very well. They had the talent. That's the reason why they were down there. Um, but they also, I think, just me personally saying, is that they knew a lot about themselves. They knew where they were going to go already. They kind of had that expectation of going pro, so they kind of had almost that little, how to explain it? Trying to think of the proper word for it now. It's not much of an ego, but more of like, hey, I know what I'm capable of. So, especially coming from a GA to an intern position and trying to coach them, you didn't get, as say, valued as much. They kind of wanted to do what they wanted to do. And when it came to their coach telling them what to do, all great and all. But I think it was just kind of more of a respect thing of, hey, they're here for their sport. They're going to do what they need to do for it versus here. The culture is based on a team effort. They all know they're here to play their sport. Yes, school is a part of it, but they just really want to get better at that and they'll do whatever they can. They're always asking for more help, talking to the resources. And maybe it's just the culture of how that was. I think it was a great way for me to experience D1 right away and understand, hey, there's the pros and there's the cons. Whereas in D3, I had athletes that are there for the academics. They're there to graduate, have a career in their future. So their love for their sport was a little more intrinsically driven. They didn't have that concept of like, oh, I can play pro. I'm going to focus on my sport. It's, hey, I love what I do. So it's more passion driven. It's more, I'm doing it for the love of the game, not just, hey, I want to be able to get my name out there.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a great point, and that's one of the main things that I've heard. Like, one of my former mentors was the strength coach at Wisconsin Whitewater, right?
Yeah.
And he said, it was probably the most fun he's ever had as a strength coach because all these people were there just because they loved playing football, right? And it
Mhm.
wasn't about, okay, I know for a fact that Wisconsin Whitewater is going to get me to the Jets or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's typically not going to be the case, but they're there because they love actually playing the sport, and so you see a little bit more of that intrinsic drive, which I feel like has got to be really cool to see.
It is, it love, and that was one of the biggest things I loved about River Falls, the GA, not even a full-time coach. When I worked with the women's hockey team, they were a team that I eventually got pulled into as like a family. Like my last day with them, I cried. It was the first time I ever cried as a coach. And that really showed me like they weren't just dedicated to their sport, they're dedicated to their purpose, to their culture. They loved saying, "Hey, Jess, you want to come travel with us?" So having me be a part of that was also another big thing of, hey, I'm not just a resource, I'm a human being to them. And that entire family with Joe Cranston, Amanda Ryder, and Joe Walsh, their coaches, they were just an amazing family. Like that's D3 for you. And I haven't had the opportunity here too much as D1 at UND to see a lot of that because I got pulled in the middle of everything. But I learned from the football team here, they've got that here even at D1. These guys are something. Coach Schmidt, when he came in, set the standards, this culture of family always with their breakdown. And the fact that I'm seeing that now from D3 River Falls to D1 here, it's like I have this, I'm supposed to be here feeling like there's a reason this is all connected.
And that's awesome, and it just makes it so much more fun to go into work every single day.
Absolutely.
So what do you think goes into that, into the, family aspect of it? Because I think a lot of coaches really search for that. I think there's a lot of different reasons I feel it with the team I'm currently with, right? But what do you think are the main aspects that really go into it?
The biggest thing I think is communication. If they're all on the same page with communicating, but also they're there for each other. They all have like their own goals of what they want to do. If we have like the pro camps that we host, they want to hopefully go pro, but in the meantime, they're here in the present moment. And a big thing that they have is the best teams are player led, not coach led. And I think that really helps develop that bond between the athletes of holding each other accountable. If someone's on the ground doing a movement, they walk by, they help pick them up, they're always there supporting each other and like just calling each other out for like mistakes and stuff too. Like that's accountability right there. That's a family right there, knowing you're not going to be left behind. No one wants to be last running to get water or go to the next drill. They're there together, and that's a full family for you.
Yeah, I agree, and I think one big piece too is like the removal of emotions. When you like you said with accountability, like my sisters can tell me almost anything that if a stranger told me, I get really upset about, right? Versus
Mhm.
if it's coming from them because I know they love me and they truly care about me, that could be a critique of what I'm doing. Like I would really listen to them, and it just if you can remove those emotions and take that accountability in stride, it makes the world a difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, even they hold us accountable. If us coaches make a mistake, they got us on. It's like, hey, Jess, you got 3 up downs. You made a mistake here. And even we'll do it. Like, that's just not accountability for the players. It's the entire team that's associated with them. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's cool, and it makes it more fun, and it makes you involved in the team, right? And it makes you, like you
Absolutely.
said, more of a family.
Oh, yeah.
How's your experience been? You started off. It's been 6 months now, North Dakota.
Yeah, just going to 7 here. Literally started like the second week of January. Getting thrown into the middle of things were very chaotic in manner of softball was going to preseason, track and field already started their indoor, and then football was winter ball. So it was a lot of, hey, I got to wake up at 3 a.m. because we got to be at the facility at 4:30 a.m. So it's kind of crazy of a big shift for me. But since being early mornings, late nights, that's just our career. We're used to it. But I was grateful that the football team was the first team I exposure to because they immediately made me feel comfortable. The guys knew I was new, being the shortest female in the entire area. They're like, "Hey, I'm Olsen. What's your name?" Or "Hey, I'm Miles. What's your name?" They immediately were able to make me feel comfortable around 106 guys of like, "All right, start all over again, new place." And honestly, 2 weeks later, I just started feeling comfortable with having conversations. Found out 2 of our guys are from Wisconsin as well, so we were able to talk about the Packers or our crappy hockey team choices. It's just that really helped ease me back into this career, especially in D1, going from St. Mary's to here. It was a big transition. As soon as I got to meet the softball girls, that's been a team that I've always loved being around. I felt comfortable as well, knowing, hey, we have softball relation. We can talk about it. I get to know the players a little bit more. The newest team was track and field, all the events going on. So being able to sit down with their coach Jim and Molly, it was in Tom for cross country. they are very knowledgeable coaches. Jim knows everything about the strength and conditioning side of things. So being able to talk shop with him about what he's done for his athletes really helped kind of ease me back into it over here. So I'm really grateful for just UND knowing like, hey, she's new, but let's help her out. Let's do what we can to make her feel comfortable because we want her here for a long time.
That's awesome. That's such a cool experience. I'm really glad to hear that. Like, I can tell, and it's unique. Seriously, I mean, if we're being honest, like every school isn't necessarily like that. There's some schools where everybody knows that turnaround is quick, and people's careers there are short, and it's kind of some people view it as a stepping stone. So I'm really glad that you're able to find something where, like you said, people really want to hold you there for a long time. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could tell that relationships are a really big thing to you, and I could tell that it's a key piece of what you really want to do. Just from your language in this past 15 minutes, what are kind of your key points of relationship development with your athletes?
One of the biggest thing I've learned, especially being a young coach, was the balance between professionalism and personalism. Because one of the biggest things, not even a couple months ago, so I've been here for a while, was some of the athletes were trying to figure out how old I was. And so when they asked me that, I'm like, well, how old do you think I am? And they immediately just jumped to like 21 or 22. So when I go, no, I'm 26, they kind of get that shock factor of like, oh, she's been here for a while. I'm like, and I appreciate the compliment if I look younger than I am. But that's kind of like building that professional, but also personal boundary of like, hey, I am your coach, but also being able to have those social conversations of asking how they've been, how was your weekend, spend time with family, and building that relationship right away, especially the professional boundary, helps in the long term. I mean, long term. So making sure you're able to not just connect with them in a professional manner, but also personable. One of the biggest things I found was from Coach Brett Bartholomew in his conscious coaching book was the 3 R's. It was research, reframe, research, reflect, reframe. So when you get to meet an athlete, you immediately start to open-ended questions. Ask them how they are, what they like to do, and that kind of starts to build in that conversation. But of course, when it comes to new athletes and you're being also a new coach, they kind of just don't want to feel like they're getting, the 20 question game. But that's when you start to kind of relate to them, talk a little more, what's going on, especially with my softball girls. Like, hey, I used to play softball. I was a catcher. So I understand when your hips are really crappy. I understand completely. And then you kind of get to the reframe part of being able to connect a little more of, hey, this is why we're doing something. And that kind of starts the entire buy-in with athletes. And that kind of really helps, especially when I come as a young coach to like, oh, she's probably just an intern or a GA. No, I've been here for a while and I want to make sure you all understand that. But we can still talk about how, hey, how was your weekend last night? Because I can sure as hell guarantee you had fun for 4th of July weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. We came back from 4th of July, and I told our guys I don't even want to hear about it. So, because I knew it was going to be things that wouldn't make me super stoked. But, you bring up such a great point, which is the balance between professionalism and personalism, or I think that's what the word you use, correct? Ultimately, how do you know that you're kind of mastering that balance? And like you said, it's a very thin line. What are some indicators that you may be leaning too far off into one side, right? Like where professionalism may be kind of compromised just a little bit. What are some indicators to you? And then what are the things that you do to correct it?
Absolutely. We know as coaches, we all have our own personal lives outside of the weight room as well. So making sure, like, there's times where like you might be out grocery shopping and an athlete sees you, and that's one thing of like conversation, just like the simple like, "Hi, how are you?" But that's also where you're like, "Hey, you got to understand that you're going to set a good example to them. What's in my shopping cart? It's not cheesecake, donuts, and pizza. It's like I'm also having the good healthy products as well." But when it comes into the weight room, also having that professionalism and personalism, like you said, it comes with how you talk, I would say. Because I can have an athlete have a friendly conversation because they might bring up a debate they're having between teammates, and you get asked into that conversation, whether it's like, what's your thoughts about this football team? And you can bring your own personal opinions into it. Like I'm a Packer fan around Commanders, Vikings, you name it here. And they can have that friendly conversation, but the moment things kind of get a little more on your personal side where you have that little of too much, that's when you're able to like have more of a stern voice or just have like an end answer of like, no, or I just don't feel comfortable talking about that. Or especially if an athlete sees me out or something of like, hey, going grocery shopping and like, hey, what would you have in that grocery bag? I don't think donuts is a healthy breakfast option. And I'll look at them and say, well, that's my breakfast, not yours. You're the athlete here, not me. But also just letting them know like, hey, I also can see you outside. we all have our own personal lives. I don't get involved with yours. You don't get involved with mine. And I kind of lead into that conversation if it needs to. But whenever it does get a little too more personal, I just say, hey, this is my life. I'm not going to get myself involved with yours. So please don't get involved with mine. And usually they will respect that because they understand, like, hey, I'm getting too close to coach, or hey, this is part of her life. And a lot of athletes I've been around, they respect that. They absolutely do. If they continue to do that, that's when I have a conversation with Coach Stein about it. Like, hey, I feel a little uncomfortable about this. Can we have a discussion? Or with Coach Schmitty with his athletes, especially if they start to get a little too relaxed around me. That's when it's like, hey, I am your coach first than anything. I'm not your homie or homeboy. I am your coach here. So you need to respect me as one. And if you're not going to, we'll have a conversation about it.
Yeah. No, you bring up such great points, and I really appreciate that. Like the first one, obviously about the grocery cart example, you crack me up because I'm literally thinking of an example from when I was a GA. I had like a 24 pack of Coors and like 2 Tombstone pizzas in my cart, and I ran into somebody. I was like, hey, and then now that I'm married to a dietitian, like what, 8 to 10 years later, like it's all Kiwis and Chobanis and stuff like that. So now I don't get worried, but I used to certainly be worried about running into athletes at the grocery store. One question for you, and I'm just curious, like, because I just truly don't know the experience. I've worked in football before, but do you feel like as a female, sometimes people can push those professional boundaries a little bit more, or is that not something you've experienced?
It is something I have experienced, not even just as a full-time coach with football, but I do have experience working with men's hockey. So
Mm.
men's hockey, men's basketball, all around sports with the men's side, there is a little difference. And I understand that as men, naturally, they're going to they're used to the strength coach of the big upper bald lineman. So it's kind of hard getting that buy-in. It's not more of them having more of a personal boundary. It's more of a respect grown. Because as soon as they find out, like, oh, I know my stuff, I know what I'm talking about, it kind of grows even to a stronger bond. Because even over time in my private sector, I have athletes still reaching back to me today of like, hey, coach, I know we haven't spoken like years, but I have this thing coming up. What would you suggest? And those are the relationships of like, holy cow, I'm so glad you reached out to me of all coaches. And I believe, yes, sometimes it does get a little, I'd say weird, but there is that of, I'm curious. Like I can sense it almost, but that's right away. The professional line kind of pops in right away, and I keep it like that the entire time, and they kind of get the hint over time. So
Mm.
yes, it does come in every so often, and that's kind of where I think being around men hockey players, I learned to chirp, as you say, enough where I can talk their language, but then if they try to cross that boundary, I'll use that language against them of like, I'm your coach and you're not going to do this towards me. Understand that? And they
That's
respect it
awesome.
completely. I love it. So I think that's where also another buying of like, hey, I understand, but not happening.
Yeah, just immediately shutting down. I love that. That's fantastic. And no, I appreciate it, your insight into that, because again, like I said, I just don't have experience with that. So it's always interesting for me to hear from other coaches about what those experiences are like. Another big piece that I can tell too is that you've mentioned a lot of different names in your career and a lot of different people who have influenced you. Anytime I speak with a coach, and especially after doing this podcast for a long time, like I can tell when somebody has strong mentors, right? And people who have really kind of instilled solid lessons into them. And when they typically, the main sign is that they bring the names up every time they speak to somebody. Because I end up doing the same thing because I had some amazing mentors. What are some of the main lessons that you've learned from your mentors in your career?
Well, the first one, like we mentioned, is the professionalism and the personalism. I first learned that one as a GA because I was at the same time a graduate student, but also an assistant coach. So Carmen Pata was my coach or my overseer at the time, and he's one of my biggest mentors. He was the director of athletic performance at River Falls, but he was one of the biggest influences when it came to that because he taught me what the difference is between being a GA and a full-time assistant coach. Working with athletes my same age that was able to do the buy-in, understand what the class is, the age gap and all that, very similar, but being able to immediately have that professionalism of like, hey, in the weight room, I'm your coach. Outside, I understand we're the same age, we're classmates, but they still have that basic starting block of she's my coach professionalism. So starting that right away was very strong, building relationships. Like even to this day, a lot of the athletes I worked with as a GA are, I wouldn't even say like athletes of mine, but almost friends to that point because we still have that professionalism of like, hey, they can reach out to me as a coach, or if they just need, female perspective or ask me human questions, I'm here for them. So that was a big one right away. Another one when it came to my first step into this realm was with Zach Ruck. It was being open-minded because in our realm, it's constantly changing. There's new ideas, there's new concepts, and it doesn't help with TikTok and social media throwing out crazy things in the weight room. It's like, all right, let's watch this. We can't judge it right away. But then afterwards, they're like, all right, pros and cons or complete con. And having the open mind shows the athletes, though, that you're also willing to listen and learn from them because sometimes they might know things more than we do. At River Falls, that was kind of like my first full-time exposure to hockey. So when I was being more open-minded, I strapped on skates one day and decided to go out on the ice. And my girls lit up when they saw me out there skating, thinking, oh my gosh, Coach Jess, she skates. So they gave me crap about that until I went out on the ice with them one day after practice, and they ate that up. They loved the fact I was putting my shoes or my feet literally in their shoes. So being open-minded of how they feel, like, oh, it's a lot harder than I thought. And that's just another reason for buy-in as well. Like you showing them that you care enough to put yourself at that disadvantage to embarrass yourself on the ice. Go for it. Absolutely go for it.
Yeah, and those moments, like you said, that's like the part of the family aspect thing, right? Where you can be okay with embarrassing yourself a little bit too. And I feel like strength coaches can kind of shy away from that, just because again, like you said, there's a stereotypical tough, like authoritarian kind of guy. But it's funny because I feel like I almost have an advantage because I'm a bigger guy and I've got a beard and I've got like resting, whatever face. And so everybody always kind of thinks I'm a jerk, but then I get to make fun of myself a little bit. And then I feel like it opens a lot more doors into building relationships with the athletes. Did you know how to skate when you first went on the ice?
I knew how to go forward and around the rink. That was about
Okay.
it. I got my skates at Eau Claire, but I never actually got really into skating until I started working with the hockey team and I started going to all their practices. And I'm like, all right, I need to understand what's going on here. And once I did, actually, one of the players came out onto the ice every so often and helped me skate. So I can now like actually skate, do some crossovers, go backwards. I have sticks and
Oh, that's
gloves and
awesome.
helmet. So that was a great way for me to also help with hockey camps when I got my first time job at St. Mary's because we hosted a lot of youth hockey camps. So me being able to understand what they're going to do when they grow up and how their body needs to move. Because mind you, like I said, I was a catcher in softball high school days, so I have crappy hips. I can relate to goalies so well with mobility now. It's fantastic.
That's huge. It's funny because I obviously, like I said, I grew up in upstate New York, and one of the big things in the winter was everybody would go to the local skating rink, like, and that's where you'd skate and that's where you'd hang out, and you'd like hang out with all your friends and everything. And so I've always known how to ice skate. And then I remember we did it in Knoxville one day. They had like an open skate or something, and nobody could do it, and I felt like the king of the world. So I
That's
love being able
awesome.
to flex that. Yeah, yeah. But again, I really appreciate your perspective on that and being okay with embarrassing yourself just slightly or going out and trying new things and being
Oh, yeah.
open minded because one, that's again how you build relationships, but then two, it's also how you have a lot more fun in your career, and those are the memories that you hold on to for the rest of your life. You mentioned something really interesting too that I always like to talk about, which is kind of the Instagram and TikTok craziness. Like you'll see all these crazy exercises and everything. How does that philosophy of staying open minded apply to that specific scenario for you, where an athlete may come in and say, "Hey, can we do this 45-degree trap bar, band resisted, whatever it may be,
Yeah.
crazy deal?"
I've actually had a couple athletes do that to me. It was a couple of my basketball players at St. Mary's, and they're like, "Oh, the guys for hoops are doing this type of thing," and they show me the video, and I look through it, and then the first thing I do after I watch the videos, I look at the profile because sometimes I want to figure out why exactly are they doing this? Is it an actual basketball player showing you the workout? Are they professional level? Are they across seas? And some of the stuff I do see, like, yeah, we'll do it maybe eventually, just not at that time. Because some of the stuff I learned the baseline of my basketball stuff I learned was at Madison with Jim Snyder. Great resource, by the way. And I would have to have that conversation, especially with some stuff is a lot of the stuff they see nowadays, especially when it comes to freshmen, they see a lot of the bodybuilder stuff, like a lot of like the drop sets to failures. And you see the people that are recording themselves, like you're still growing at that age, you're still maturing, you're not fully developed. So they have that ability to do that. But my question is this person you're looking at playing the same sport as you? Are they the same body type? And depending on what the exercise or movement is, we might be doing it already in the future, or like, yeah, we can give it a try. I'll sometimes have to ask, like, hey, I want you to try this and then tell me how you feel. Because if they like it and I try and I like and agree, sure, be it. But also, mind you, I do not have TikTok. I just have the Instagram reels. So they show me a lot of crazy stuff on TikTok, and I'm like, there's only so much I can do.
Yeah, I unfortunately not only have a TikTok, I post on it frequently as well too. So I'm very tapped into what these people see. But I think you bring up a great point, and part of one of the best tools I've ever had is just saying, "Hey, we might not be doing this right now. Maybe we'll do it in the future," right? And kind of tabling it, and then that way it also I feel like the issue that becomes, and why I like you saying the open minded piece so much is when an athlete brings something to you, right? And it's a video that is ridiculous. And for a fact you may never do it and you shut it down completely and you just completely rip it apart. It also shuts that athlete down and it
Mhm.
shows them like, hey, I'm not willing to have a conversation about these things. And they may have brought it just because they thought it was something that was cool and they wanted just to show you something. They said, you know what? Oh, Coach Jess would really like this. So I wanted to show her this, right? And if you come in and you say, no, this is stupid. We'd never do anything like this. I can't believe they would do it. It really shuts down the idea, but it also shuts the athlete down. So I appreciate very greatly your being open minded. And I think it makes a big difference, seriously. And you bring up Jim Snyder too. I had the chance to meet Jim Snyder when Wisconsin whooped us last year in basketball. So I'm a Jim Snyder fan, unless we play them. So
I was like, he's a great individual, and he's good friends with Carmen Pata. So that was another good connection coming from River Falls to Madison. So I had someone I already knew there, but also I kind of felt more comfortable. Like he had very similar training concepts with Pata that I've
mhm.
seen. So having those conversations was amazing, and I've never felt more short in my life working that with that basketball team. But I'm okay with it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Man, well, yeah, he did a great job with the guys. I mean, they dominated us, so that was awesome.
Yeah.
um, you mentioned one thing when you first started talking about your career and your journey, and that there's times where you kind of experience burnout, or you felt a little bit like being overwhelmed from work. And I think a lot of strength coaches can relate to that. Can you tell me about that experience and what you did to basically address the issue you were seeing?
Absolutely. So when it comes to burnout, yeah, also from perspective, it's not always going to be work related. It's going to be a combination of everything in life. There's the reason why there's a work balance when it comes to our career. And we're not the average, 9 to 5, 40 hours a week job. We're the early mornings with maybe some breaks in between to late evenings, or maybe you have that coach that's just back to back sessions throughout the day. I believe there's times where I have just come home and I just might have just completely shut my body and mind down for like maybe half an hour, just without realizing, like, hey, I drilled myself today. Maybe not physically, but mentally, because there's just so much going on. And there's times where I might get overwhelmed of like, okay, I have this to do, I have this to do, I have this to do, or I'm worried about something else that might be happening in 2 weeks. And all of this kind of just bundles up together. And I think the big part of it is that myself personally, I'm someone that keeps things inside. And I've just always been like that. I'm an only child. I've been raised by two amazing parents that like I'm grateful. They're my biggest support system, and I can always call them and talk to them about this type of thing. Mind you, they had no idea what my job was for about a year and a half. They never understood it all. So when I just gave it to them, it was kind of just almost like an open rant. And they're just like, yeah, I'm here listening. Yeah, which kudos to them handling that. I love that. But it's just, I think, not realizing like you got to take it day by day. And when I did experience burnout, it was kind of just the oversight of there's point of views from coaches of what they want to do. This is what I want to do with athletes. There's this going on my schedule. A coach and I might not be on the same page as something, or an athlete's being a pain in the butt once in a while. There's just all these variables that can just conjugate together. And one of the biggest things I did, and it was at St. Mary's at the time, because I think I was about a year and a couple months in, and it was when I was realizing, like, I'm working a part-time job to help pay for things. I'm not getting paid the most for it, for 5 teams, working day in and day out. I am doing extra work on the side, not just at the university, but I was a waitress at a time just to get some more money in. So that worry just kind of got all bundled up. And one day I'm like, I need to go talk to somebody. And I ended up going talking to a therapist about once a week to help let it all out. But it was also nice just to have someone there I can talk to and it not be judgmental at all, or they're just there as a big support system. It was someone who never knew anything about me, about my life, just someone who would sit there and listen. And that's, I think, really big, especially in our field where we're surrounded by athletes, we're about coworkers, and we're all very similar to what we do. We kind of just want someone who wants nothing to do with what you do, with your work, your life, nada. Because then when they come with, a response back to you, it's very genuine. It's very helpful. It's mutual. They're there for you. And going to talk to her was a big relief off my chest, knowing she's right. Like, I shouldn't be having to worry about this. I shouldn't have to stress about this. Like, it's out of my control. And I think just hearing it from somebody I had no idea who was or related to me made me really take it in a lot more. So having that support system, yes, I love my parents. I love my mentor, Pata. I talk to him every so often about stuff like this, but just someone random that I can talk to about something really helped get things off my chest and depress. It was fantastic. Another thing I've done is I've literally just driven out of town to the middle of nowhere and just let everything out. Like, I've driven to a different neighbor town I've never been before, and I just kind of sit in my car and just ignore everything about my life, mentally, work, you name it, and I just let it all go. And I think that kind of helps put like a big reset in my mind mentally of like, this is where I am now. I'm in the present moment. And I kind of went back and forth to a book, mind you for the language, is called Unfuck Yourself by Carrie John Bishop. But it was a very great book to read at the time when I was starting to get the burnout feelings, because it talked about being in the present moment, controlling your controllables. Don't let your emotions take over. And kind of going back to some of those things really kind of put me back to my center self of, it's okay. You have tomorrow, but you don't worry about tomorrow. You worry about today. If today was your last day on earth, did you spend it well? Did you make the impact on athletes? Did you do what you needed to do today? And that really also helped with like put less worry of the future and focus on me right now. Because at the end of the day, if I'm healthy and I'm happy, then I should be happy no matter what happened today. Even if, a weight room session was misscheduled or a poor communication between a coach, like at the end of the day, am I happy? Am I healthy? Is things went the way they need to be today? Is it tomorrow problem? Sure. Push it aside. Focus on today though.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Seriously, no, seriously, I really appreciate you being so open about everything, because this is a big problem within the field.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see within strength and conditioning, like I think of my best friends who I came up with and I was interns with and GAs with, or young strength coaches and people I reached out to, so many of them have left the field.
Mm-hmm.
And they just understand that, like, that they can't do it anymore. And so I really appreciate you being able to, one, talk about it, but then two, about your solutions, about what you've done
Mm-hmm.
for it. And I really appreciate you bringing up going to see a therapist as well too, because I think it's one of the best tools that you can possibly have. And I agree with you wholeheartedly on just the completely objective view that somebody can give you, because I think even with my wife and I, right, we've both seen therapists, right, we've both spoken opposite, we both speak to each other, right, about all these things that go on. It's my best friend. I've communicated every single thing to her, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously when she tells me about her problems, I'm still going to have it in the lens of, okay, somebody's talking to my wife about this way, or she needs to handle it this way.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of bias there. And then I think too, when she goes and sees a therapist, when I go and see a therapist, we can talk about things 100% open and honestly as well. And you don't have to worry about hurting the other person's feelings. Like you said with your parents, like these are people who have a lot of background. They know Jess for your entire life, right? And they raised
Yeah.
you. So there's a lot of background there, and they're always going to see you as their daughter. So ultimately there's a lot of history there. So when you can go see somebody who's completely objective, has no clue about anything else that's going on besides just what you tell them, it makes things a lot more clear, and it makes it a lot more easily understood, especially when you get that feedback immediately back. And then one thing that I had to learn too was when I first started out, I've probably about the same time frame in my career started feeling the same, issues of burnout and feeling like maybe this career isn't for me. And I would go see a therapist, and she was like, "You understand, like this is crazy, right? Like the career that you're doing is crazy. Like the
Oh
amount of
yeah.
hours you work and the pay and everything." And it was, for me, was finding out, okay, this is crazy, but it is something that I want to do. And like accepting that and understanding that. So I would never have been able to get that perspective, because everybody else I know is in the athletics world. And so they're all just going to say, well, it is what it is, or another day, another dollar, like whatever the sayings may be amongst other strength coaches. When, I've ultimately went to somebody who was completely outside of it and was like, this is crazy. Like if you love doing it, then you should keep doing it. But you got to understand that this is a weird career. This is not what people typically do. And so for me to have that experience was really, really beneficial. So I appreciate you sharing your experience, because a lot of coaches struggle with it and a lot of coaches don't like talking about it. And I think it can be very detrimental to the career.
I think it needs to be something that needs spoken up more often, honestly. Like it's kind of like shadowed to the point of like, if you love what you do, money's not a factor, the long hours not a factor. Like they tell you all these things of like why you love what you do. And it's like, yeah, I love, maybe some early mornings and late evenings. I love being able to help athletes. But then at the day, you are still a human being and you have to take care of yourself. And having that resource, like we have a team psychiatrist here, which I think is fantastic for our athletes to have someone to talk to on their own behalf. But even ourselves, like even at a young age, we should not have to fear of, oh my gosh, what happens if I don't want to be in this career anymore because of all these things. It's, we gotta be okay to like, hey, just take a step back or talk to someone about it. It's okay to not be perfect all the time. We have feelings, we have our mental status. We need to be able to take care of ourselves first. Because if we're not healthy, we're not being able to be our 110% coaching for our athletes. So we have to put ourselves first sometimes, and accepting that, like, hey, burnout can happen, but knowing how to take those precautions, whether you want to stay in the field and you want to take care of it, or maybe you need a break. There's maybe people out there that take maybe a year or two off from their field because they have to just recollect themselves before they get in, or a new change of environment or job. There's all these options, but taking care of our bodies and ourselves are number one when it comes to our field as well.
Yeah, yeah, and you bring up such a good point too with, you can almost feel pigeonholed in this career sometimes, where it's like, okay, this is, strength and conditioning is so unique. This is probably one of the only things I can do. So now as a young strength coach, I'm super terrified about, okay, I can only be a strength coach for the rest of my life when
Mhm.
there are a lot of other options, right? And there are different things you can do with your degree or, even just something completely outside of what we've based our education in. But there's a lot of pressure on young strength coaches. And then, like you said, too, to be perfect. Part of internships is just constantly being told what you're doing is wrong and correcting it, right? And then finding out, okay, well, you didn't correct it good enough, so we're gonna have to keep correcting it, whatever it may be. Even if it's from a really nice mentor who can
Yeah.
really help you out, you're still being told what you're doing is wrong a lot of the time. So there's a lot of a perfectionist kind of mentality within the career too. So I really appreciate you bringing it up because it's stressful. It's a super stressful career. And there's a lot of benefits to it. Like you said, there's a family atmosphere. There's a lot of fun that you can have. But ultimately, like, you have to be able to know if you can balance those or not. And then maybe it is time to take a break, which is okay too. And it's like, it's not the worst thing in the world to take a break. I feel like a lot of times with strength and conditioning, people can kind of say, you take a break, well, then you're cooked for the rest of your
Mhm.
career. You're never going to be able to get anything. It's like, it's just not true. Like, there's time for all of those things.
Absolutely. Like, we need to put ourselves first sometimes. And, we always put the athletes first. It's the reason why we love the field. We want to help the athletes improve or achieve their goals in the future. We want to be able to communicate, make those relationships. But at the end of the day, if we're not happy and taking care of our bodies, we're knocking years off our lives early, too early. It's the reason why we probably say early mornings, late nights. Some of us have a caffeine addiction to function throughout the day. You never know. It's we're human just as them. And if we don't practice like we preach of like, hey, we need good sleep, we should do good sleep. They should eat well, we should eat well. But we should also take care of their bodies and minds. So shall we.
No, it's only fair, seriously. And we preach all this stuff because it works, right? For a
Mhm.
reason. There's a reason why, not overdosing on caffeine every day and getting good sleep and eating complete plates makes a difference. So I agree. I might take your the second piece of advice you have. So you might find me in Wilkesboro, North Carolina later today, just a completely random town and just letting everything go. So I think that helps too, honestly, because like you said, you get to just stay in the present moment, and you just get to be there for yourself. That's another
Mhm.
way of putting yourself first. So I love that too.
Absolutely. Just for 4th of July, like, I didn't have any plans. So my friend Kenzie and I, we ended up just going to Fargo, which is, hour and a half away, but it was enough away. We're like, we didn't worry about anything. We just
Yeah.
enjoyed our time together, talked shop, whenever we want. And it just felt nice to not worry about anything else. We were there for ourselves, nobody else, nothing else.
That's awesome. And it's
Yeah.
just, like you said, it's just more fun and allows you to enjoy the times with your athletes just a little bit more.
Mhm.
Okay, so the final question I have for you is I got to see on your Instagram as well too. You're big into meal prepping. What is your favorite meal prep to prepare?
Oh, the crappy Instagram that I don't really post much on anymore. Mind you, I have that coaching one just so athletes can follow because I do keep my personal one. Another reason why
Yep,
for the professional
fair enough.
personalism. Yep. So my biggest one was over the summer. A lot was overnight oats just because it was carbs and protein, but it was also cold. And so when I was at St. Mary's, we were outside a lot for our camps, so it was always hot. It was just quick and easy to make. But I think my favorite meal I ever made myself was it's called the Givens special, but it's beef sausage, rice, red and black beans. It's like in a box mix, but I can just cook that whenever throughout the year, and I can just big fat carb protein load, and just feels so homey to me. So like I can make those can last all week, but I know like a football player can probably eat in a day, but it serves
Yeah.
like a good amount of people, and that's just like my favorite thing to make, especially when it's like a late day. Like I need to come home, eat food, takes maybe half an hour to make. Cook the sausage, rice, and beans, and I'm good. it just makes me feel more at home. So it's also another reset to myself of like, if I need to get myself grounded, make a home meal, whether it's the red beans and rice given special. I've done twice baked spaghetti. That was a big one when I worked with some wrestlers. Like, they loved it. But no,
That's awesome.
I love to cook. That's like a therapy thing to me. Of I'll meal prep every week, or if I need to make something new. I know over the summer I made a peanut butter cake, and I brought that a couple times here, and they ate that up. I'm like, I just want to try something new. I didn't eat it; they all did. That's all mattered.
So you share food with your athletes as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I'm sure they love that, especially when you're bringing in peanut butter cake.
Oh yeah, I made protein balls one day and asked hey, can you try this? Tell me how you like it. I tell them I love to cook. Hey, can you make a peanut butter cake? Sure, I'll try. Makes two, brings them in. Our athletic trainers were eating some of it. Like, as long as they're happy and they're showing that I can be human too, like, hey, try it.
Yeah, I do stuff outside of strength and conditioning too. I have hobbies as well. That's what my wife makes sourdough all the time, which is like the
Oh,
best possible hobby for a significant other. I mean, because like literally, I have at home right now a full loaf of cheddar and chive sourdough waiting for me. So I'm gonna crush that when I get home for
cheddar
sure.
and chive sourdough.
Oh, cheddar and chive, so good. We did what was it, rosemary and white cheddar the other. And it's endless. You know, sausage bread. It's like the best thing ever. So, and we did focaccia too, which was absolutely incredible. Which is basically just deep fried bread. So,
I'll say
I'm
there's a Wisconsin thing. I think it's called spicy cheese bread. It's a Wisconsin thing at the farmers market. It's just this one bakery makes it, and it's cheese with red flake pepper in it, and it's bread. They make buns of it. You can only get it at this one bakery, but it was to die for when I first tried it, and I'm like, I would never imagine pepper and cheese in a bread. Never. But it was
yeah. Oh, it's
delicious.
incredible. Oh, it's just next level. It's like literally just like a very pizza form of bread, which is awesome.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you're gonna make that
Well,
with the pizza, it's just next level game right there.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm gonna have to make myself a given special as well for my meal prep next week. I'll do it in
Hey,
honor
I'll
of you
send you the
too.
recipe. I'll send you the
There we
recipe.
go. Please do. Seriously, I'd love it. So, well, thank you so much for coming on, Jess. I really appreciate it just to get to know you better. And I really, really appreciate what you shared with everybody. I think this is a really impactful episode, which are my favorite ones to do. So I really appreciate you. If somebody wants to follow your Instagram or wants to keep up with you, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, my Instagram is coach_Givens Jess, I believe. I'll give you the notes for that.
There you go. Yeah.
I use it more of just to keep track with other coaches at that point, but that would be the best way to reach out to me. They could also go through my email, which is on our stack directory. It's jessica.givens@und.edu. I got my work phone on me, so I'll always be checking emails and DMs through my Instagram because I love to answer questions, especially when it comes to young coaches. We're all in this together, so don't be shy. Absolutely. And it was an honor to be here. Like, this being my first podcast was meaningful to me, knowing I can actually talk about all this, and I really love to.
Well, it's an honor for me to have you on, seriously. And I would never be able to tell it was your first podcast. You absolutely crushed it.
I appreciate it so much.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.